Bierton Strict and Particular Baptists, 1831. This society of Protestant Calvinistic Dissenters were Baptists, and they were formed and defined in law as a church in 1831. Their trust deed and articles of religion are now registered with H.M. Land Registry, as the chapel building was sold after all but one of its members of the church had died. The chapel building was closed for worship in December 2002, as all the members of the church had died except Mr David Clarke. Mr Clarke remains the sole remaining member of the church. Their articles of religion show the church had covenanted together to maintain, preserve and teach the gospel of Christ as taught in the Old and New Testament scriptures. These articles of religion reflected those doctrines of grace as specified in the First London Particular Baptist Confession of 1646, second edition. Mr David Clarke from Aylesbury, Buckinghamshire, was accepted as a member of the church in 1976, and in 1981 the Bierton Church became a gospel standard listed cause. In 1982 Mr Clarke was called by the Lord and sent by the church to preach the gospel wherever the Lord opened the door for him to preach. In July 1984 David Clarke withdrew from the communion of the church due to an unresolved dispute relating to particular redemption. The church had permitted general redemption to be taught and were not prepared to put matters right. This was contrary to their articles of religion, the church covenant, and their association with gospel standard causes. As a result of David Clarke's secession, he wrote his book detailing the reasons for his secession, entitled The Bierton Crisis, and now republished in Let Christian Men Be Men. Further to which, he has written about the nature and problems associated with articles of religion, coupled with suggestions on how to avoid similar problems to which he had faced. The book is entitled Difficulties Associated with Articles of Religion amongst Particular Baptists, with a view to assist those having difficulties in subscribing to confessions of faith. David has concluded that any church who understands and can subscribe to the 1646 second edition London Particular Baptist Confession must be self-governing and not look to or join league with those having denominational ties that hold conflicting views to the 1646 Confession of Faith. On the maxim, the Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand, and except the Lord build a house, they labour in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. The Lord will watch over the affairs of the church if we fulfil our calling, but if we turn aside from the gospel truths as taught in the New Testament and expressed in the 1646 London Particular Baptist Confession of Faith, we cannot expect the Lord to keep the house. The church must look to the Lord for their help alone and not elsewhere. Their help must come from the Lord alone. This lesson is taught us in the case of Hezekiah, 2 Kings 18, who began well, but in fear he did not trust the Lord and paid gold and silver to his enemies to save Jerusalem. The kingdom was preserved for David's sake, not Hezekiah, and as we know, eventually it was sacked. An example in modern times can be seen in the case of C.H. Spurgeon, who sought to deal with concerns over the Baptist Union in 1887 and his subsequent withdrawal from the Union, along with the New Park Street Church, of which he was the pastor, due to the downgrade controversy, where Spurgeon contended that many in the Union had turned aside from believing and teaching the gospel truths as set out in the London Baptist Confession 1646. I invite you to read or view the First London Particular Baptist Confession and then to read or view difficulties associated with articles of religion amongst particular Baptists. Links are provided at the bottom of this page to the text.